Hello and welcome to the Psych Leadership Podcast, the show that helps you understand the psychology of growth, leadership, and making big moves in your life and career. As always, I'm your host, Luke UpChurch. Today, we're going to talk about time management that works for you. So let me ask you this. Have you ever sat down with the best of intentions? You think to yourself, today is the day I'm going to knock it out. I'm going to get all this stuff done, my entire to-do list. I'll just be checking those boxes all day. And then the next thing you know, it's 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock, and you've only done a couple things. Oh, I've been there too. Back in grad school, I remember opening up my laptop and you think to yourself, just quick, I'm going to check my email. And then suddenly 2 hours had gone by and that paper that I was going to write or, that project I was going to work on, I hadn't even really touched it. And most of the time, it's not because I was necessarily putting it off. It was that I got distracted, right? Maybe I opened up that email, and I don't know about you. I tend to go down these rabbit holes, right? I read something, and that drills me into, well, I ought to read the article on that, right? I get news feeds and things like that, or maybe it's TikTok, maybe it's YouTube, but you end up going down the rabbit hole, and next thing you know, you look back and you think, man, I got nothing done. Well, the truth of the matter is that managing your time isn't really about the clock. It's about how your brain works when it comes to focus, planning, and prioritizing. And that's really what we're going to dig into today. So, a lot of folks, they think of time management as almost a discipline issue. They say, well, if I was just tougher on myself, I'd be able to get more done. And frankly, I fall into this trap sometimes with my kids, even my wife. I look at the way that I process information, and because they don't process it in exactly the same way, it kind of doesn't add up to me. Right? If I see something that needs done, for me, it's like having an itch on your brain, right? And you can't physically scratch that itch, so it just drives you nuts until you take care of it, right? Maybe a better example would be like if you had a rock in your shoe, right? For me, a task that needs done is like a rock in my shoe. That's probably a better analogy. I can't not take care of it. I'm not just going to walk on that pebble the whole day long. I'm eventually going to take off my shoe and figure out where the daggone rock is, right? Well, sometimes when I think about things like prioritization, for me, the way that I would prioritize isn't necessarily the way that you would prioritize. And so sometimes by comparison, we look at somebody else and we think, well, so-and-so's really got their stuff together, right? They're knocking out their to-do list. They're never behind on their assignments. They're always getting after it. And why can't I be that way? Well, it actually comes back to a concept called executive function. And if you think of your executive function as kind of like your brain's control tower, it helps you plan, remember, organize, and yes, even resist the urge to go look at TikTok and YouTube videos when you should be writing your essay. If you struggle with things like procrastination, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're lazy. It means that your executive function is being stretched, and you might need a better system or systems plural so that it's not just self-criticism, but that you have a way to be able to kind of bucket those things. And I had to learn this the hard way, which is why I'm telling you, I always, my inner monologue was always, well, if I just worked harder. But finding that structure is what really did it for me. So let's talk about the power of prioritization. Pardon me. Sorry, guys. I'm struggling a little bit today, so I apologize. I'm not going to be able to mute every time that I feel a cough coming on, so I'll just do my best to shield the mic a little bit. I apologize. In any case, the power of prioritization. So some folks like to just create lists, reminders, things like that. Other folks don't like a system constantly reminding them or pushing them, prodding them to do things. So there's a few different ways that we can prioritize. Okay. For example, I like to use a reminders list. I know that I've got so many things going on that there's no way I'll remember to do that thing if I don't write it down and give it a timeline. Some folks just don't like to be pushed by a deadline. They need more flexibility. So understand what works best for you. Understand that my way of doing things is not going to be yours, but you need to have some way to be able to prioritize what truly matters. If everything feels urgent, it's easy to just react. That's why people get burned out. That's why they feel busy all the time when they might not be moving forward. I tell my team all the time at work, just because you're busy does not mean you're productive, right? I can have back-to-back meetings on my calendar. It doesn't mean I actually got anything done, right? There's a difference there. So I remember in one of my first leadership roles, for example, I would spend hours just answering emails because they all felt urgent. Somebody was asking me a question. I felt like I needed to respond to that question right away. But the really important work, the stuff that I was actually getting paid to do, like developing my team, well, that stuff ended up getting pushed aside. And in psychology, we call this cognitive load. And the easiest way to explain it, if you are if you're working on a laptop, for example, your laptop can only handle so much, right? Your car has a certain weight limit. An elevator has a certain weight limit. It can only handle so much. Well, so can your brain. You can't stack everything on top and expect your brain to run at full capacity, right? The cognitive load is too much. When your brain is too much on its plate, performance drops. Okay? It's exactly like if I'm running my Xbox, for example, and I'm trying to install a game while playing a game, do you think that maybe performance is going to dip a little bit? Right? It's doing two things at once, two pretty big things. If I'm trying to push a wheelbarrow and it's filled with topsoil, for example, well, that's okay if I'm on flat ground, but give me a hill. Well, now I've got a little bit too much load. I'm going to have to do something to even that out. Well, your brain works the exact same way. So the real skill here is deciding what actually deserves your energy. So now let's talk about the Eisenhower Matrix. This is a tool that I've used in the past to help discern the must do now versus the can't wait. So there's a lot of different methods to do this. I've seen people basically draw 4 blocks. So think a normal XY axis rather, but you're drawing 4 blocks. And across one of your across your x-axis, sometimes you might have things like how cost effective is this, how much money is this, things like that. You on the top you might have time. So you know on your x-axis you have dollars, on your y-axis you have time. You can also just put importancy versus urgency. Right? How important is the item on your vertical axis, on your y axis? And then how urgent is the item on your x? And so essentially you've got 4 blocks here, right? You've got urgent and important. You've got important but not urgent, urgent but not important, and then neither. That's a traditional Eisenhower, okay? So I would use this back in undergrad school, for instance, without even realizing it. I just kind of thought through what are the things I have to do right now because they're, a big grade, but it's also due in a short amount of time, right? That's going to get my biggest priority. If it's a big grade, well, it's important, but maybe the urgency's down because it's not due until next month. Okay, so things are going to move on this continuum. They're going to move in these 4 quadrants, but it's easy to start mapping out what is important versus urgent. Okay, and the distinct difference being if it's important because it has a value to it, right? Because it's the grade, it's 20% of my grade or something like that. That makes it important. The urgency is a function of time, or maybe the amount of studying you're going to need to get that important grade. Okay. So for those of you that are already in a job, let's go back to our email example. Answering those emails, an email from the vice president of our company directly asking me a question, well, that's pretty important because of who sent it. The fact that they're asking me a question probably makes it urgent, but maybe they give me a timeline, right? Do they need the answer by the end of the day? Well, that's pretty darn urgent, right? So it's important and urgent. But maybe they don't need the answer back right away. Maybe they're just asking my opinion, right? That's going to drop my urgency down. That's going to help me understand how quickly do I need to respond to this. And again, those things are going to change over time. So if I have a project from my boss that is a really important project, initially that might not be urgent, right? Hopefully my boss gave me some lead time on this. But maybe I've procrastinated. Maybe the business or life or my health or something got in the way. Now the deadline is this week. Okay, now it's important and urgent. Okay, so that's a pretty easy tool. And again, I apologize if I'm coughing in your ear there. I'm doing my best to cut that out. But in any case, thank you for your patience with me. So, second thing is time blocking. And this is literally just scheduling chunks of your day for specific things, including downtime. Don't forget that part. So, the first time I tried this, I felt ridiculous writing lunch on my calendar, for example. But once I started, my days felt a lot less chaotic. So, a pro tip for you: if you're on the Apple ecosystem, you probably have focus modes. You probably haven't used those. A lot of students that I talk to know that they exist. They don't actually use them. I have focus modes that are scheduled on my phone that also connect to all my other Apple products. I'm an Apple nerd. So they connect across all those. And I'm saying this in the Apple ecosystem. I'm sure Android has something similar. But essentially, you can turn off or on notifications for specific apps. You can create the icons that are on your phone, that are on your desktop settings. You can set those up so that the relevant ones for the work you're doing at that time show up. So, for example, for years, from 2018 until this year, 2025, I was studying undergrad and then graduate school. I needed to be able to separate when do I have downtime, and even in my downtime, I would have a focus mode called relaxing that allowed any of my friends and family to contact me. But then at 7 o'clock at night, the system would jump to personal, and then it was basically just the elite. It wasn't even all of my family. It was the core family, like wife and kids family. It was not all my friends, but just the couple that I have a strong bond with, right? The inner circle, if you will. At the same time, I would also have, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, it's in work mode. And so the apps that I'm going to use, the tasks that I need to do for work are there. Do I have my YouTube icon on when I'm in work mode? No, it's not really relevant. But I have my Outlook icon, right? I have my music icon because I'm going to be listening to some music while I'm rocking through those emails, right? But you can hide or enable certain things, certain aspects to help make sure that you have that day chunked out. The next step then is to kind of translate that into a calendar. So mark on your calendar, create those boundaries. When am I going to have lunch? When am I going to study for this, study for that? Like I actually put project time on my work calendar, because I know that if I say this is just open time, I'm probably going to get a meeting booked over it. Right? Open time on my calendar is inviting somebody else. It's allowing somebody else to control what I'm doing in that free time. And so I will schedule a quote unquote meeting for myself to work on a project by myself, just so I have that time dedicated to that. So think about doing that. You can do that on your personal calendar, on your work calendar, your school calendar. It's really easy. It'll make your day feel a lot less chaotic. Next thing I'm going to ask you to think about is called a Pomodoro timer. There are lots of different apps for this. Um, in fact, I just created one from Apple Shortcuts, but I know that there are apps for it. The whole idea is that you work for 25 minutes, then you take a 5-minute break. It sounds so simple, but trust me, this works. You hear a lot about people saying, well, I'm multitasking. No, you're not. You're context switching. And just like those of you that remember the old cartoon shows, there was this cartoon where the main character, I think it was Bugs Bunny, he's trying to do a task and he's getting called from two different directions by two different people, and they're asking him for two distinctly different things. And he kind of runs back and forth and he can't figure out, right? We already talked about cognitive load. Well, multitasking is a similar type of issue there. It's not just the amount of load, the amount of stimulus that you're pumping into your brain, but now you're asking it to go into two different directions. Well, just like poor Bugs Bunny, you can't go left and right at the same time. Just doesn't work, which means that you're going to do both tasks or all three tasks half-ass because you're not giving your full attention to any one thing. So the Pomodoro timer kind of helps you get away from that. It allows you to just have that mental picture, that stopwatch literally on your screen, that you're saying for the next 25 minutes, I'm going to do emails. Everything else can go away. Turn on do not disturb, whatever you need to do, but turn on that timer. And for the next 25 minutes, pedal to the metal. Just one task. That's all you're doing. Then I want you to take a 5-minute break. And I know this sounds silly, but even 5 minutes is enough to sort of reset the brain. So this is your time where you can go get up and refill your coffee. Don't fill that break with another thing. That's the trick. It's so easy to say, oh, 5-minute break, let me look at Facebook. Ah, ha, ha. You've fallen into the trap, right? You will spend more than 5 minutes going down the social media black hole. So that 5 minutes, meditate, look out the window, talk to your friend, something like that. But don't get sucked into that 5-minute window being something that has a task or an outcome driven to it. So next, let's talk about changing how you think about time. This is a little bit of a mindset shift, but a lot of people think about time management as how can I cram as much possible into my day? But what if you could protect your energy and choose what matters most? So psychologists call this aligning with your values. So for me, when I stopped treating work as something to get through and started connecting it to my bigger goals, that motivation gets a lot easier. Another key here is that if you mess up your plan or you don't finish everything, you need to stop thinking that that is a failure. It's feedback. It's something that you can get better at. It just means that you need to adjust a little bit and try a little bit next time, a little bit of a different strategy next time. So if you take into account, I gave you 3 tips there, 3 different ways: the Eisenhower Matrix, time blocking, Pomodoro timer. You try one of those and you know what? The Pomodoro timer just doesn't work for you. Right? I can tell you personally, I've got it on my desktop. I do it specifically when I'm having a very stressful day and I just need to focus. I'll turn on that timer, throw in some good music, and just focus on that one task. I don't do it all the time. It just doesn't work as well for me as I would like. Too much ADD, I guess. But understand that you're going to have setbacks. You're going to need to pivot. So in closing, folks, time management isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters most. And once you start seeing it that way, you'll realize that you're not managing time, you're leading it. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening. And if you found this episode helpful, share with a friend that's always saying there isn't enough time. And remember, growth isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Until next time, you have a great day. We'll talk soon.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end of the podcast. Thanks so much for your time today. If you like this content, I'm going to ask that you consider a small donation. Every little bit helps, but this allows us to continue not only doing the podcast, but actually offering the internship positions, the leadership conferences, as well as the in-person courses that we deliver to high school and college students. Think about hitting the donation button for me. And again, we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.